win at Pitt. Number 3, Texas is 11-1 in the SEC. They beat number 8, Kentucky, 67-49. Number 4, South Carolina, 11-1 in the SEC, 101-63 winners at home over Florida. Number 10, NC State is 12-1 in the ACC. They beat Miami, 76-74. Number 12, North Carolina, 67-62 winners over Virginia Tech. Number 13, Duke beat Wake Forest 72-47. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Ever have one of those days where your gut just feels blah?
Ugh, yes.
Occasional bloating or gas could be signs that your gut is out of balance. But Align Probiotic can help. Align 24/7 Digestive Support is a daily use probiotic with a unique strain to help relieve occasional digestive issues. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand. So when you feel the signs, it's time to try Align. Align Probiotic. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time. The next time you're out to dinner with friends, you can order the shrimp cocktail for the table. And maybe you'll realize it only comes with 4 shrimp after you've already given away 3, but that one shrimp will be so good. And if you switch and save hundreds, you could get shrimp all the time. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shrimp, Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
How many SportsGrid listeners does it take to change a light bulb?
It takes 2.
1 to change the light bulb, and 1 to see if our mobile app can provide the same amount of light. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. It is a day of love. It is Valentine's Day. And the celebrations are underway as we speak in the city of brotherly love for a Super Bowl parade for the Philadelphia Eagles. The champions of Super Bowl 59 celebrating the second Lombardi Trophy in franchise history. We hope you feel the love here on FFC. It is the offseason, but there are so many news and notes around the National Football League to break down each and every day. It's what we do to send you into the weekend up until 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Lisi Guy, today on Football Full Circle.
Yeah, turn the page. We're in the 2025 campaign already, and there's nobody I would want to do the show with other than you, baby. Give me kisses. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Happy Valentine's Day, baby. This is it, right? Love, joy, happiness for the Philadelphia Eagles and for other teams searching for that title. Teams like the New York Giants or some of the bottom feeders in the NFC and AFC. We'll see about the offseason moves, and then obviously, Ben, you and I will be covering the draft in a few months, so that's what it's all about.
Absolutely so, Joe, and that's the next big event on the NFL calendar. 10 days from right now, February 24th, in the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We'll talk about the 329 prospects headed to Indy in just about a week and a half and what it all means in terms of those draft odds and the #1 overall selection, the numbers that are currently available. Joe, what a week it has been for Kellen Moore in the Big Easy, in the city of New Orleans. He guides Philadelphia offensively to a Super Bowl championship on Sunday night in NOLA. He stays in New Orleans to make it his new home, named the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints. And yesterday, his introductory press conference for the first time at 36 years old, the youngest head coach in the NFL. He talked about the process, the hiring position, what he expects when he is there in New Orleans. And Joe, probably first and foremost, he talked about the quarterback position, that being Derek Carr, a guy that Kellen Moore played against during their college days in conference action. Kellen Moore, a Boise State legend, against Derek Carr, who played his college football at Fresno State. Kellen Moore was prepared. He understood the questions he would receive in regards to Derek Carr being the quarterback of the future in the Big Easy, and was rather non-committal, highlighting Carr's success in his long football playing career, but never saying the words, he's our guy, he's our face of the franchise, and also not saying we're moving on from Derek Carr. Non-committal would be the term to use, Joe. What did you make of Kellen Moore's introductory presser?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you would expect. I mean, I think Kellen Moore, as a head coach, is up against it, and I hope the organization has time and patience with Kellen Moore and gives him potentially at least 3 seasons to generate and build this roster, because it's a major rebuild. Even though they're in a winnable division, they have multiple pieces, including Derek Carr at the quarterback position to fill. They have aging veterans on the offensive side like Kamara and Demario Davis, their linebacker, that have done it for years, but they're at the back end of their careers. And, the young talent that they do have, players like Chris Olave, just haven't been able to stay healthy and on to the football field to help the organization win games. And that's the biggest problem. So, again, it's a good fit because he's a young offensive mind. He just worked with multiple pieces in Philadelphia and bringing them a championship and a Super Bowl. So he's a young guy that could get it done, but you have to have the patience and you have to help him out in the draft and free agency, something that Mickey Loomis hasn't done during his tenure in New Orleans.
And he's been there for more than 2 decades, Joe, and it's been a constant for New Orleans, at least the last few years, of course, in cap purgatory. They are over the cap already entering this offseason by $54 million. In the red, minus $54 million. That's not good, especially, Joe, for a franchise that needs to build up a roster with many questions and many positional holes. However, Kellen Moore has this job because of his rapid rise in the coaching ranks. A 6-year offensive coordinator around the National Football League, his first 4 in Dallas, tons of success with the Cowboys. Not such a great year, but injuries a story during his lone season in 2023 with the Chargers, and of course, a Super Bowl winning OC now with the Philadelphia Eagles. He is viewed as an offensive whiz kid. He is the youngest NFL head coach at the age of 36, turning 37 this summer. And you would think, Joe, if that guy, an offensive mastermind, were to walk into a situation where he could prevail and have success right away, it would be where there is a quarterback in place, somebody he knows that he can partner with to find a beneficial scheme. They don't have that in New Orleans. Even if it is Derek Carr, which does not seem to be the case, there is no indication the Saints are set on retaining Derek Carr, albeit under contract. We'll talk about his deal in just a moment. It's a tough spot for Kellen Moore if his expertise is offense and you don't really have a lot of pieces that make you all that excited about what this Saints offense can be.
Right, and think about what they had with Dennis Allen, a very conservative coach that wanted to, work off a defense, and the defense gave way and regressed last year. So now you bring in Kellen Moore, and to your point, you don't have any pieces. They are best right now, Ben, getting rid of Derek Carr, trying to trade him, or see if a team like the Giants could pick him up. And if that's the case, then build with a young quarterback. There's no reason that year number 1 try and get 6 or 7 wins with an aging quarterback, and then all of a sudden you're regressing in year 2 because you just can't sustain that type of productivity. So I don't understand what the organization big picture is. They have the right young head coach potentially, but you have to start building and getting younger players in there, and that's something they haven't done. Again, is Derek Carr the answer? I don't believe he is. He hasn't really fit in New Orleans. The fan base, if you survey them, they really don't like Derek Carr, so they hate his guts. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. They want to. Love hates him. Every week is a Derek Carr video, so you might as well ship him to at least a team. See if you can get some value, and then at that point build. Because if they don't, they could be in a similar situation with Brian Dable and the Giants. And I always go back to that because that was the first year they overexceeded expectations, and they're in purgatory now because they never had a game plan outside of Daniel Jones. You need a game plan outside of Derek Carr.
Derek Carr has been in the National Football League now for more than a decade. Just completed his 11th season. Next month, in late March, he turns 34 years old. He spent the first 9 years of his career, of course, with the Raiders as a franchise. They decided to make a move. They don't really have an answer at the quarterback spot either, but traded him to the New Orleans Saints, or released him, and he signed with New Orleans. When he signed with the Saints, Joe, entering 2023, New Orleans was the odds-on preseason favorite to win the NFC South, expected to contend for the division and maybe even a conference crown. One thing Derek Carr has always been is reliable and available. In the first 10 years of his NFL career, played at least 15 games. This past season, due to injury, only 10. The fewest amount of games he has played in and started throughout the entirety of his decade-plus NFL career. And he's about to be 34. And you have a new head coach who is seen as that offensive whiz. I don't think Derek Carr is the starting quarterback for the Saints, Joe, beginning in 2025. So, if that is the case, what does New Orleans do? And what's next for Derek Carr? It's a part of the overall quarterback questions and conversations that will be had around the National Football League this offseason. We'll highlight the teams that need to make a quarterback decision on the other side of the break. Live right here on Football Full Circle.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin. He just gives that 5. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a sweeping package of immigration laws Thursday aimed at carrying out President Trump's mass deportation agenda. This update brought to you by Sky Rizzy. Explore proven results with Sky Rizzy. Republicans say the laws put Florida on the leading edge of conservative-controlled states working to leverage states and local resources for federal immigration enforcement. Florida's new legislation mandates the death penalty for immigrants to the U.S. without legal authorization who commit capital offenses such as first-degree murder or child rape. Igloo is recalling more than 1 million of its coolers sold across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada due to a handle hazard that has resulted in a handful of fingertip injuries, including some amputations. The now recalled Igloo 90-quart flip-and-toe rolling coolers have a toe handle that can pinch users' fingertips against the product, posing potential amputation and other crushing risks, according to a recall notice from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
There's something you should know and always remember. SportsGrid does not increase luck. We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck, go find a horseshoe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Kellen Moore is the 7th and final head coaching hire of this 2025 carousel. Yesterday had his introductory press conference, a little bit late in the game, but of course, it came after he guided Philadelphia to a Lombardi trophy. Joe, the main story of the press conference was, of course, Kellen Moore being rather non-committal about Derek Carr's future within this Saints organization. Is he the face of the franchise? Probably not. Is he the starting quarterback come week 1 of the 2025 NFL campaign? Also, probably not. The issue with Derek Carr is he is under contract through the 2026 season. He can't just be cut with no sort of consequence, which more than likely, Joe, means a deal has to happen. There has to be a trade package out there. I'm not so sure what Derek Carr would get in return. I'm not sure how many teams are clamoring for the services of Derek Carr, about to turn 34 next month. What do you think the market might be for Derek Carr if it's not in New Orleans?
Well, I mean, I brought up the Giants as one, right? That's been one of the rumblings that he's been linked to. And the reason why I say that is if they don't go and the Giants now are potentially those rumor mills about Stafford, whether that's true or not, what happens? Yeah. Where else could Derek Carr go and start? Tennessee, if they pulled a fastball, right, and just, said we want to trade out of the first overall pick and get, draft picks and let's just say move down, where else? Could he go to the Steelers and start? I don't think that's a good fit, right? Especially playing in the Dome and knowing where he's played a majority of his career, right? In cold weather, he's not that great of a quarterback. So where else could he go? I mean, it's like tied a little bit, Ben. Where else would you see Derek Carr outside the two teams that I mentioned? I mean, maybe. I mean, if the Rams move on, here's the thing. But that's the thing. Like, we were talking about this all last week and this week. What happens if Stafford does, let's just say, one out of LA? They have no contingency plan. Who's the quarterback that they get? Justin Fields? I mean, Derek Carr? Who's out there? Jameis? I mean, does he go to the Browns? I don't know.
Oh, you were asking me a question. I thought my IMP died out for a second there. But listen, yesterday on the show with Scott, we kind of ran through about 6 or 7 teams around the NFL this offseason that are going to need to address a quarterback conversation. And not necessarily like in Indianapolis. Ooh, is Anthony Richardson it? Is he the future of our franchise? I'm talking about probably having a starting quarterback begin 2025 that is a different guy than you had to start 2024. A couple of those teams can address it, we would think, in the draft. The Titans hold the number 1 overall pick right now. The Browns, 2nd overall pick. The Giants, 3rd overall pick. Then you get to the Raiders, who have the 6th overall pick. The Jets, 7th overall pick. These New Orleans Saints, who draft 9th overall. And then later in the opening round, by all indications, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Probably 7 NFL teams right there, Joe, that will look to have, at bare minimum, a different starting quarterback to start next year than they did this previous season. And you're talking what I think you just reflected there with Derek Carr. What exactly is the market for Carr? What exactly is the market outside of that for any quarterback? The free agency class isn't great. It's really Sam Darnold. Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr are probably the 2 biggest names, but both under contract and would have to be traded for, we would think, where their teams would take on a hefty penalty for doing so. And we talked about how the Saints are so far in over their heads when it comes to cap space. It's not a good place to be. And Joe, in the NFL draft, this quarterback class is not necessarily seen as elite by any means. We might see 2, 3 guys at most, more than likely, go in the first round this upcoming April. So there's a good amount of teams, nearly a quarter of the league we estimate, that is going to look to address that quarterback question, but maybe not many resources to answer that question.
And if you're looking at just overall quarterbacks, right, you want to throw Cousins in there, Aaron Rodgers, you want to throw Stafford and Darnold. Outside of Stafford, right, I would take a shot on Derek Carr over all of those. So, yeah. And the reason why I say that is I don't love Derek Carr. But if you're talking about, bridge gap quarterback, my selections would be Stafford, Fields, and then Derek Carr over all the older guys, even Darnold, right? I would rather roll the dice on Derek Carr than Sam Darnold, knowing what I got in the last 2 games and the playoff game. I would much rather take a shot on Derek Carr over Kirk Cousins that could be washed up. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers on top of the locker room situation. So at least Derek Carr brings somewhat continuity to a locker room where you could say, all right, he's valued in that regard. He's not elite, but he's not average. He's slightly above that. and we can win some games. What fit is that in terms of the NFL? We won't know for like a couple of weeks, maybe even after the draft. So we'll see. Yeah. But again, I think a team like the Giants and the reason why I say that is Brian Daboll has no margin of error. So, if you're the organization, they need a quarterback. But if you're Brian Daboll, you could be like Eberflus, right? Where you get a rookie quarterback, you don't get to 9-10 wins in year one, you're gone. So maybe they push and say, we don't like this class, and let's get Derek Carr or a veteran in there, and hopefully we can maybe grind out 10 wins.
Joe, it does not seem as though the Titans and the Browns are going to draft first and second overall in that order, just based on the early smokescreen season, speculation season that is the draft cycle. So maybe the Giants will have a quarterback fall in their lap, or maybe they're the team to move up, even if just by a spot, to get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, some other names that I would say are fringe first-rounder potential at this moment. And the interesting thing is, Joe, I agree with you. I think Derek Carr is probably that most reliable guy in all of this class of quarterback that could change places this offseason. But do any of the guys we listed make any of those 7 teams a true playoff contender, conference contender? Probably not. We'll continue to talk more about the NFL draft and the quarterback class up next.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1920, Jack Dempsey KOs Bill Brennan in 12 rounds for the heavyweight boxing title in New York City. In 1930, the New York Giants defeat Notre Dame 22-0 in a charity game. And in 1980, the New Orleans Saints end their 14-game losing streak by beating the Jets 21-20.
It's all over. The Saints have won their first game of the year.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Full self-driving cars are still not reality, but most modern vehicles now offer some kind of driving assistance like lane keeping or automatic braking. New North Carolina State research tests 3 ways to get a distracted human driver to take control. Number 1, warning bells. 2, spoken instructions.
Please avoid the bridge abutment.
And number 3, a more conversational approach.
Tell me, what did you eat for lunch? By the way, that's a bus.
And the winner, conversation.
I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
Totally pedestrian offensive line, and they got beat up by a younger, more hungrier crew. That's really what it came down to. You look at that front 7, those dogs, baby, those dogs were bopping. Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. I mean,
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Weekdays 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
anywhere, even while the wife's talking to you.
if you got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Lisi got yesterday afternoon the complete prospect list. All 329 guys making their way to Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine at the end of this month. Just about a week and a half away was unveiled. And Joe, we're going to talk a little bit of a quarterback focus to begin, and then talk somebody listed as a cornerback and try to pair it up with the NFL number 1 overall pick odds, the only betting market we have available at this moment on FanDuel for the 2025 NFL Draft. Joe, all of the notable quarterback names expected to attend in Indianapolis. Cam Ward, the current odds-on favorite to go first overall. You have Shedeur Sanders, more than likely QB2 in this draft class. Names like Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, national champion Will Howard, who beat national champion runner-up Riley Leonard. Quinn Ewers, who started off this college football season, thought of as a top 5, top 10 pick, now might not even hear his name called until day number 3. Lacey Guy, a lot of QBs will head to Indy. I wonder how many QBs we see in the opening round come late April in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah, when you look at the draft class for quarterbacks, it's not deep. And, love him or hate him, Jackson Dart is that, I want to say, outlier in terms of the fringe. To me, it's just Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, number 1 and number 2. I personally would take Sanders over Cam Ward just because I think he's a better pocket passer. And what I mean, it's not to knock on Cam Ward. It's just Cam Ward a little bit shorter and at times extends plays by, moving in the pocket and throwing at times against his body, which on the next level could be a factor. But, we always see this. When teams need a quarterback, somebody's going to wow at the combine, whether it be Milroe, the way AR did last year. And, we know Jalen Milroe, raw, but the physical attributes are going to be there. We talked about Joe Milton, how he flew up last year in terms of his performance up until the 3rd round. There's going to be a quarterback or a player that just flies up based off this performance. And that's why from the betting aspect right now, I don't see any other quarterback outside the top 3. Like I would only bet on 3. I don't think there's 4 or 5. I can't see a team valuing one of those other players at that type of price in the first round. I could be wrong, but we'll see. There's intriguing markets, and I know the cornerback will get on the defense. I think it's a very deep running back class. And we talk about going back to RB1s, potentially with Derrick Henry and the performance with Saquon Barkley. There are a number of different backs, in my opinion, where you can make the argument, Ben, and I know from a value perspective, they're not maybe first overall picks, but when they get on the field, they are worthy of a first-round talent. And that's what's going to be intriguing to me when we watch this combine play out in basically 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very deep running back class, Joe, to your point. So many big names that you know from college that you expect to excel in the National Football League. Does that mean they're first-round picks, as Lacey alluded to? Perhaps not, but so many guys that are going to have a say in the National Football League. The record setter in Ashton Genty, probably a first overall pick. But even guys, Joe, like Taj Brooks, LaQuint Allen, Donovan Edwards, Trevor Etienne, DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon II, Omarion Hampton, like so many names that excelled at this position in college football that we would expect to at least be drafted and or get a shot in the NFL, which is when you can take advantage of the running back position under a rookie deal, paying them at a discount. Because, Joe, I actually think we are starting to see the value once again in the running back position. Of course, led by Saquon Barkley, but even guys like Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, performing incredibly well, getting paid in the offseason.
Yeah, and think about, Rocket Sanders is on that list, right? Cam Scatteraboo, which had a dynamic semifinal playoff game, right? He's a dual threat type of running back. Damian Martinez, right? A bulldozer between the tackles. I mean, Montrell Johnson that came on for a rising Florida team. I mean, these are all backs that could go to an NFL organization and potentially contribution in year number 1.
Yeah, absolutely so. We'll talk a little bit more quarterback for the NFL draft, and then the reigning Heisman winner, who in terms of the NFL draft combine list, Travis Hunter is listed as a defensive back, a corner back. Where is Travis Hunter going to fall in the 2025 NFL draft? Find out next.
The Winning Edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. Women's top 25 hoops on Thursday. Number 1, UCLA upset at number 6, USC 71-60. The Trojans 12-1 of the Big Ten. The Bruins dropped to 11-1. Number 2, Notre Dame improved to 13-0 in the ACC after an 88-57 win at Pitt. Number 3, Texas is 11-1 in the SEC. They beat number 8, Kentucky 67-49. Number 4, South Carolina 11-1 in the SEC. 101-63 winners at home over Florida. Number 10, NC State is 12-1 in the ACC. They beat Miami 76-74. Number 12, North Carolina 67-62 winners over Virginia Tech. Number 13, Duke beat Wake Forest 72-47. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Friday is Valentine's Day, so if you still have shopping to do, then it's time to get to Macy's, because we make finding the perfect gift so easy. How easy? We have last-minute gifts that feel truly thoughtful, like fragrance gift sets from Yves Saint Laurent, Carolina Herrera, and Marc Jacobs, boxed and ready to give. Yeah, it doesn't get much easier than that. So head to Macy's and make their Valentine's Day a little more special, and your life a little bit easier. But hurry in, because you're almost out of time. These deals end Friday at Macy's.
Progressive presents Renters MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Joe Fallon's bedroom mini fridge. Sure, this pint-sized chiller's max capacity is 3 soda cans, but what it lacks in stature, it makes up in cooling strength. Each beverage a perfect 37 degrees every time. And the 2 feet Joe walks to get a drink, priceless. That's why his mini fridge is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
You're listening to SportsGrid, spreading the winning edge far and wide. Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app. Face it, the winning edge is everywhere. Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
It is the early portion of the NFL offseason. It is early in draft season as well, about a week and a half away from the start of the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Joe, we're talking about quarterbacks right now. There is only one betting market available on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Who is going to be the first overall pick? Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami, via Wazoo, via Incarnate Word, is a minus 140 favorite. Second best price is Abdul Carter at plus 220, the outstanding edge rusher linebacker out of Penn State. And the reigning Heisman winner, Travis Hunter, at plus 450. Shedeur Sanders, his Colorado teammate, at a 6-1 number. Before you get to a very large drop-off, Jackson Dart, yet another quarterback, at 45-1. Lisa, guy, you would think if Dart even has a price to go first overall, there is at least some slight consideration that he could be a first-round pick. I'm not so sure. We're going to have a lot of odds markets that open up over the next few months until we get to late April for the 2025 NFL Draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin. One of those markets is going to be over-under number of quarterbacks selected in the first round. Last year, Joe, we saw a record. 6 quarterbacks taken in the opening round, all 6 in the top 12. It was the most we have ever seen in the first round in the modern draft era, dating back to 1994 when the NFL firmly became a 7-round draft. Lisa, guy, we're not going to get 6 this year. I'm not even sure we're going to get 3, but I do think the over-under is going to be set at 2.5. Do you think that's probably a fair prospect at this moment?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like that Jackson Dart, and I was on him all last year. But the tape doesn't lie. And when you go to games and you watch him play against LSU, and he can't win that game on the road, and then with a must-win game with his team looking and staring at a college football playoff appearance, he throws 2 critical interceptions in the swamp against a young defense and didn't step up. Worst game of the year. That is more important to me than what he does in the combine. I don't care if he grips it and rips it for 90 miles an hour. That doesn't matter to me. It matters about what he did in big games. And if we're talking about putting a value on that type of player in the first 10 picks, where I know I have to commit to this guy for 4 or 5 seasons, pay him X amount of dollars, and I need him to be able, whether he can or not, I need him to be able to start from day one, a la Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. I can't put that value or price tag on Jackson Dart. So there's only 2 guys that you could say, I'll roll the dice whether they pan out or not, and that's Shador and Cam. Other than that, everything's a huge risk at this point.
Lacey, I would agree with you. I'd say about a month ago, as the college football season became a little bit more crystallized, the end of the NFL season, what the draft order was going to look like, I would have said there's 2 quarterbacks going in the opening round. And I still think only 2 are probably worthy of a first-round grade / consideration. But we know how the draft works. We know how NFL teams feel. There will be a quarterback, if not multiple, that over the next few weeks and months rises up the ranks, is seen as a first-round pick, as a top 10, top 15 caliber selection. Maybe they'll be correct. Maybe they won't be. But I do believe there will be some consideration for a third QB to go in the first round. I'm just not sure it is the right choice. Only twice, Joe, in the last 10, 15 years or so, at least since 2013, have we seen just one quarterback go in the opening round. 2013, it was E.J. Manuel, about 16th overall to the Buffalo Bills. 2022, not all that long ago, Kenny Pickett, the only first-round pick. Of course, the latest we have ever seen a quarterback go in the opening round, 20th overall. Not quite that bleak at the quarterback spot, but not quite the quarterback classes of the last 2 years. Joe, a lot of this also tied into who is going to be selecting first and second and third overall. And we learned earlier this week the Titans are going to listen to offers for that first overall pick. New GM in Nashville, Mike Borgonzi, I guess, is going to have an open phone line. Lisa, do you think there's a team not named Tennessee selecting first overall come late April?
Yeah, I think that's possible. Again, if you're Tennessee, if I was Tennessee, I would take the quarterback, right? Because you have nothing right now. But, it's a business. And if you're going to throw, 4 or 5 draft picks, whether they're a handful of number ones or whatever, to get that number one overall selection and maybe a veteran quarterback that can hold you over, maybe the team, they have so many needs that they need to fill that I could see potentially they do that. Personally, if I was Tennessee, I'm pulling the trigger. I'm living or dying with one of these quarterbacks because if I don't get them now, I might not ever get them. And knowing how they missed with Malik Willis and Will Levis, not even first-round talents at that particular time, and they drafted them with the hopes of being starters. If they trade out and Shador and Cam turn out to be all pros like Jaden Daniels in year number 1, the organization will never live it down, and that's it. But they're stupid. They're a dumb organization. And that's why I believe they are. Let's call it what it is. They reached up and grabbed Will Levis. They reached up and picked Malik Willis. They did that. Whether that's a former GM or not, as an organization as a whole, they made that assessment, and they're dumb enough to trade away the number 1 overall pick.
Completely agree. New GM, as Lisi alluded to, Mike Borgonzi, but the Titans have made some very interesting draft decisions in terms of the quarterback spot in back-to-back years, nothing in 2024. Joe, if the Titans do, in fact, trade out of that spot, I still think a quarterback goes first overall. And that is also a component of those betting odds. Cam Ward right now, minus 140 to be the first overall pick. To win that bet, to cash that ticket, Cam just has to go before anybody else. Before anybody else hears their name called, not Cam Ward first overall to the Titans. Joe, let's go to the reigning Heisman winner, who is not a quarterback for the first time in a while. That's Travis Hunter, the two-way superstar at the collegiate level, officially listed as a corner back in the NFL Scouting Combine participant list. I'm not surprised by that, Joe. I think he is best and most elite on the defensive side of the football. I think NFL teams probably have a similar evaluation, but that's all to say. just because he goes in as a DB to the combine does not mean he only has to play DB in the NFL.
No, and Dion certainly did both throughout his career, right? Especially with the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. You know, he was a partial wide receiver in certain sets. So depending upon how they're going to utilize him, I think when you take Travis Hunter, yes, you evaluate him at his best attribute, and that's lockdown corner. But you know that you're getting potentially a two-way player that maybe could be explosive for your offense in given sets, right? So I think it's a win-win. If you have a defensive back need, and look at Philadelphia, we're getting two defensive backs, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. They've completely transformed their defense this year to a Super Bowl contender. When you have a lockdown corner in today's game that takes away a third or a half of the field, all of a sudden now you're cooking with gas. So he's definitely a top three player. Where does he go? There's a number of teams now that are all of a sudden switching their scope and saying, oh, we thought we needed offense. Maybe we need defense the way Philly bought it. So he could be the hottest commodity in this draft.
It will be really interesting, Joe, to see where he falls. A big-name player with a lot of talent and, of course, a lot of notoriety behind him as well. I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. That's without question in my mind. But where exactly in that top 5 and how much is influenced by what Tennessee and Cleveland do with the first and second overall selections. Plenty more around the NFL and in football as a whole in this offseason next on FFC.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a sweeping package of immigration laws Thursday aimed at carrying out President Trump's mass deportation agenda. This update brought to you by Sky Rizzi. Explore proven results with Sky Rizzi. Republicans say the laws put Florida on the leading edge of conservative-controlled states working to leverage states and local resources for federal immigration enforcement. Florida's new legislation mandates the death penalty for immigrants to the U.S. without legal authorization who commit capital offenses such as first-degree murder or child rape. Igloo is recalling more than 1 million of its coolers sold across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada due to a handle hazard that has resulted in a handful of fingertip injuries, including some amputations. The now recalled Igloo 90-quart flip-and-toe rolling coolers have a toe handle that can pinch users' fingertips against the product, posing potential amputation and other crushing risks, according to a recall notice from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
If you love designer brands and you love clearance, then you're going to love this. Macy's is having a huge designer clearance event right now with incredible new designer markdowns on cold weather styles from BCBG, Hugo Boss, Michael Kors, and more. How big are the markdowns? How about Coach boots for $200 or less? So if you're looking for the things you love all in one place, come in and shop the designer clearance event at Macy's today. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. It's just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important. That's where we come in. SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning more often. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, it is Football Full Circle. He's Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Lisi, guys, some more news around the NFL for a team that is currently slated to select third overall. That's the New York Giants, looking to sell a limited stake in the ownership group of their franchise. The Mara and Tisch families releasing a statement that they are putting up for sale about 10%, a minority ownership stake, and we'll see what happens. It is supposed to be, Joe, not just a minority ownership group coming in to be a part of the Giants franchise moving forward, but to set a record-setting valuation of what an NFL team could go for. Of course, that is always on the rise. There are some reports that Eli Manning could be the front runner or the foreperson, if you will, for a potential group that could make a bid for that ownership stake. So the Giants going to sell a little bit of what they got.
Let me say this: they're going to take in about $700 million, right? If it's valued, I think 7.3 to 7.8. I mean, depending upon if Washington, I believe Josh Harris's deal paid. They said he won it with a $6 billion bid, but he paid $7 billion in cash. But they said he paid $7 billion in cash, so they take $700 million in. If it is Eli, it's similar to what Las Vegas did, right? Selling a majority of the shares and having a Super Bowl winning quarterback, the GOAT, Tom Brady, come in. I guess it brings in new life. It brings in maybe a different vision. Now, they don't have majority say, but it maybe just adds a little bit more, I want to say, newness to the organization, especially when you think of storied franchises, you think Super Bowl titles. If it is a former player that comes in and brings a winning culture and attitude, it can't hurt. You know, I do feel the organization, though, like just from a stadium perspective, and you look at the valuation because it's the New York market, they really should upgrade that stadium. Even though it's fairly new, it's nowhere near Las Vegas. It's terrible. It's nowhere near the valuation. So if you're asking me, you know, would you want to buy into 10%? You're buying into 10% of the New York market, but you're not getting the full rewards, let's say, as opposed to Dallas. That if Jerry's, opened that up, that valuation, is in the area of, I bet, $11 billion.
Yeah, listen, you're still buying into a profitable thing to be involved in a New York sports market for the Giants with a fan base that will always be invested. I completely agree. It's a fan base, though, that is getting a little bit tired and wants to see some results and needs to see some winning. And just in terms of MetLife Stadium as a whole, where both the Giants and the Jets play, it sucks for being in the New York marketplace, for being in the New York area, but technically in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It is not difficult to get to from Manhattan, from the city, from surrounding areas because of public transportation. That's not my issue. There's just nothing cool about it. There's not one redeeming quality about MetLife. It's not exactly convenient by any means. They don't have great attractions around there, unless you want to call the racetrack on the other side of the parking lot that takes about 15 minutes to drive to anyway. There's just not a lot that goes on around there that you would think would be the hot spot. That is New York, right? The Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. It's not really that. Of course, they can't build a football stadium with that infrastructure in New York City, in Manhattan any longer. You don't have the charm of Madison Square Garden or even Soldier Field in Chicago that has its own issues. So you have to go to the outskirts. I understand that. There's just not much that they have spruced up around that area to make it feel like a destination or something really unique.
Yeah, and think about what Philly did, right? Philly has all 4 stadiums or 3 stadiums right in conjunction with each other where, and that the Link, even the Link has that indoor bar area. It's a party house.
Yeah.
It attracts a lot of, it attracts a lot of young clientele, and that's what you want, right? You just don't want to buy in. Okay, it's a winning, storied organization, but now we have to upgrade everything. We have no attraction but a football team. You still want to go if the team sucks. You still want to enjoy yourself at the stadium. Like, Where are you going to go? The mall, the American Dream Mall. You're going to go. Ski down that slide. That place stinks. I mean, give me a break. I mean, I lived in basically Jersey my whole life, and it's not all that.
Where are you from?
Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's right. Never forget. Joe Lisi from BK.
Where are you from?
Anyway, Lee, Calabasas, California.
Oh, okay. Just West Coast, baby.
You know me, man. You know me. When you're out on the West Coast next year having fun at the Super Bowl, try to stop by and say hi to Ricky Steve. So as we go around all the football offseason, Joe, we haven't talked a lot of college football here on this show. One, you've been away for a little bit of time, not like away, not doing anything, obviously working and working hard and doing some great work. But we've also focused on the NFL postseason, of course, the build up to the Super Bowl, all of that, the early going of the offseason. But now we kind of hit that lull in the NFL. Final introduction for a head coach happened yesterday, about a week and a half until the NFL Scouting Combine. Been a lot happening around CFB. Most recently, Joe, the complete reworking of the staff under Ryan Day in Columbus. Chip Kelly, now the offensive coordinator in Las Vegas for the Raiders. They promote Brian Hartline, the very outstanding wide receivers coach and recruiter, to be that new acting OC with full play calling responsibility. Jim Knowles, who was the defensive coordinator in Columbus the last 2 years, making the Buckeyes defense the best in the country basically for 2 years in a row, leaves for Penn State. That was some big news. He's from the Philly area, so he wanted to head back home. Ohio State, Joe, earlier this week hires who to be the new DC? Matt Patricia. What are your early thoughts?
Well, I think Ryan Day is a coach that not a lot of coordinators like working for. I'll just say that. It's a great hire all around, but we could get into it on the back end. There's a lot of coordinators that just jump ship after a while, and that's a little fishy to me.
Part of that is success, right? But maybe Lisi is onto something. We'll talk about Ohio State and the Buckeyes' outlook to repeat next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern. And Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi. Then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to SportsGrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle for the first time in a while. About some college football conversations. Joe, earlier this week, Matt Patricia named the new defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, our reigning national champs. Of course, they needed to fill that vacant spot because Jim Knowles, rather surprisingly, left Ohio State, which was the best defense all year long in college football, one of the main reasons they won a national championship, to head to an in-conference foe in Happy Valley and Penn State. Now, Patricia hasn't worked in college football, Joe, in over 2 decades, when he was last an offensive assistant at Syracuse in 2003. But longtime defensive coordinator in New England, won a couple of Super Bowls under Bill Belichick, was the head coach in Detroit for about 2.5 years. That flamed out infamously, and most recently was kind of working as an assistant with the Eagles 2 years ago, then had to take over as the defensive play caller. That didn't go all that well either. But a guy, of course, that has the defensive acumen and the pedigree where you would think, Joe, that experience could have success on the collegiate level. Will Matt Patricia be a successful defensive coordinator in college?
Yes, because the talent's there. I mean, Ohio State, defending national champions, they're going to have top 5 talent, across every level. Can he coach them up? Absolutely. Will he get along with Ryan Day? We'll see. Because there's been, and I keep saying that because I understand Jim Knowles is from PA. I get that. But you just won a national championship. Now you're going to go potentially to one of your arch rivals just because the money's there and you want to go home. The reports came out that during one of the playoff games against Oregon, Day was very vocal with Knowles, and there was a lot of going on with the defense. And you've heard this, and we saw Chip Kelly now bolt for Las Vegas for an OC job. Something just doesn't jive. I'm sorry. You've heard former players come out and say Ryan Day, likes to throw a lot of people under the bus. And maybe that'll change now that he's won a national championship. But right now, Patricia's a Belichick type of guy. They've won at every level. And I don't know long term if this is a marriage that'll play out in Columbus. Will he be successful? Yes, successful enough where I don't think their defense is going to be atrocious. Successful getting along with Day, that's a bigger question.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's been a lot of coordinator turnover in the last few years for Ohio State. Longtime DC Kerry Combs, he was supposed to be the guy. He got dispatched for Jim Knowles because Combs' defense could not defend Michigan on the ground. Knowles still had some issues with that as well, but ultimately now at the pinnacle as a national champ. We have seen some offensive coordinators come and go. Ryan Day calling plays. Brian Hartline elevated in 2023, but Day still really calling plays for most of that season. Now Hartline is taking over play calling duties. Will it be successful? We shall see. Of course, a lot of changes now, Joe, this year for Ohio State, but they returned so much talent offensively, namely in Jeremiah Smith. Julian Sayin expected to be that starting quarterback. They're going to lose a lot on the defensive side of the football as well. Some of those anchors of their defense the last few years. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. You got guys like Denzel Burke in the back end of that secondary, so on and so forth. There is always going to be talent. The Buckeyes are booked as the national championship favorites for 2025 at this moment at a 6-1 price, a $0.50 shy in front of Texas and Oregon, $1 in front of Georgia, $2 in front of Penn State with the addition of Jim Knowles and the return of Drew Aller and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. A lot is expected now in Happy Valley. Those are the 5 best prices, Joe, all separated by just $2 to win next year's Natty.
Yeah, if I had a bet right now, I would still go back to the Georgia Bulldogs at 7-1. I know they didn't get it done against Notre Dame, but I still believe in Kirby Smart to right the ship. Obviously, with the quarterback concerns now, they have a future. They know where they're going to go. They have playmakers, and we know Georgia. The biggest thing when you look at the interior line, Georgia is dominant, right? They've recruited very well. So I like Georgia's chances this year. I would take a shot right now. If we're looking at dark horses, my heart's with LSU. We're talking about explosive. 20-1, I already played it.
Yeah, I know you did. A lot of wide receiver talent now in the Bayou.
Nick Anderson.
For Garrett Nussmeier. Nick Anderson, Marion Brown. A lot to like. If you're BK, we'll see if it works. Joe Leese, Ben Stevens. Hope everybody has a great weekend. spend time with your loved ones. It's Valentine's Day. We'll talk to you Monday.
Now you've done it.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.